Hey, Ryan Michael Galloway here with We Don't Need No Stinking Recordcompany.com. I'm talking to Steve Anderson of Steve Anderson Music Services, and we're in a suburb of Dallas, Texas called Frisco, and if you're looking for him. But so one of the things in the setup of a guitar, we talked about the straightness of the neck, how the neck joins the body, and we touched on the frets a little bit. Oh, bad pun, sorry. Anyway. And but you know, sometimes people get a hold of a guitar. I can remember I was playing with this one group of folks, and or hanging out with this one group of folks, and they gave me a guitar and they said, "Sing a song." And I started to play a bar G, and everything was out of tune. And the further I went up the neck, the more out of tune it was. I knew the intonation was just like way off, and it had one of these bridges that slid up and down. I could never even quite find the spot, the sweet spot. But intonation is how you define the length of the string, so that when you press down on the string, it plays the note it's actually supposed to. That if you held it up to a strobe, that it would be correct. And I know you know, one way is to match the length up of the string so that the harmonic chime is right over the top of, is it the 12th fret?
The 12th fret, right.
Is that still the procedure that you use?
It is. I mean, it's a tempered system anyway. It's never going to be completely
Explain
perfect.
tempered.
Well,
That's something people wouldn't know.
Tempered meaning that you've got 6 strings, 6 different tensions, and there's a different amount of pull. There's a different and different tunings. You've got varying degrees of being in tune.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's say I'm all the way down at the, my guitar's perfectly in tune, but I'm all the way down at the 1st fret and I play an F chord. And gee, those notes on the E and B strings just feel like they're a tad sharp, and I've always assumed it's because they're so close to the nut that they get pulled a little bit harder and get pulled sharp a little bit. And there's, other than trying to finesse that, there's not too much you can do about that.
Right, and I think that's a big factor. The other factor being that once you fret a string, you've changed the length of that string.
Right.
So you're going to have varying degrees of being in tune or not.
Yeah, physics is not perfect in terms of, like you just told a customer, that this is not a perfect science.
Right, it's not a perfect. So what we try to do is make the string the same length from the bridge to the 12th fret as it is from the 12th fret to the nut.
Okay.
And if you get that close, if you get that so that that's on, the rest of the guitar is going to sound sweeter and more in tune. Technically, it's not perfectly 100% in tune. If you had perfect pitch, it still drives you crazy.
Yeah.
But it's sweeter and it sounds the way it's supposed to if you can make the harmonic note and the fretted note the same.
Now the gauge of the strings is going to affect that, right? Like for instance, a higher gauge string, the more you got to stretch that string down to the fret, the more it's going to pull it sharp a little bit.
It certainly
could,
can,
if
yeah.
it's not low enough. Right? Okay.
Yeah, I think that certainly can be a factor. Also, you've got amplitude going on. You've got strings moving in different directions. Heavier strings need more amplitude. You've got to move more in order to develop the same amount of tone. Part of what you get when you do that with a bigger string is you get a bigger tone.
Yeah.
And then with a smaller string, obviously, you've got less amplitude, so you can get away with a little lower action, and you can get a little easier playability.
Okay, so I can come in here and I can come in with my extra light gauge strings and say, set up my guitar, you do a great job, I take it home and I slap some medium or heavy gauge strings on there, and everything's going to still work perfectly, right?
Right. No. Well, again, if you go back to what the first thing you look for is the neck profile. Making sure that
it's going to pull the neck harder, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, or the top. You're going to pull the top forward or whatever it's going to do.
Or spring off the
anyway.
bridge.
Yeah, you've got to start with the neck set, the neck profile the way you like it.
Yeah.
Before you can do anything else, and once you change the tension, all of that is changed. And sometimes it's subtly. If you change from 9s to 10s, probably not a huge difference. 9s to 12s, big difference.
Gotcha. Do you find it's a little less critical on an acoustic guitar, which is generally running in a heavier range of strings anyway? Or?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that for the most part, acoustic guitars primarily are played in a lot of cowboy chords, a lot of open position chords. You're not doing a lot of high note leads.
So you're not doing bar chords.
Right, and you're not as concerned up here on an acoustic guitar because you want everything down here to sound sweet.
Yeah. Well, and plus, when you're playing leads, they're going by pretty quick. Your ear might not perceive that they're a little sharp or flat or whatever.
And there's less manipulation on an acoustic guitar. I can change the profile of a saddle so that where the string breaks over that saddle, If it breaks at the far back point, you can address, it being too sharp.
And the saddle is the touch point on the bridge, right, where it's actually setting on that little, an acoustic guitar, it's often a piece of bone.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's, okay.
And we can change where that bevel is on the bone. That's one of the tools of manipulation we have for intonation on an acoustic guitar.
Okay, so getting back to intonation really quickly, you're going to change the length of the string. How do you do that?
Well, on an electric guitar, it's easy because you've got these saddles that adjust forward or backwards.
Okay.
And if you measure the 12th fret at the harmonic and you fret the note and it's flat, you know that saddle's got to go forward.
Yeah.
And the opposite being true as well.
On an acoustic guitar, how are you going to do it?
Well, you get the neck where you want it. You check the intonation, and then, depending on what kind of guitar it is and how much manipulation you have, you can change the scale length of a guitar, of a string, by raising or lowering the saddle, or by moving it forward or backward, by changing that bevel, or by changing where the...
I've even seen some acoustic bridges that have, the bevel a little forward and a little backward, and I mean, they get right down to the individual
You can do
string.
each individual string. And a lot of saddles I make, we're going to compensate the B, if nothing else. Or
I've
the
seen
G.
that. That seems to be one of the bigger...
Yeah, the B and the G are the two that cause the most headaches.
Okay, now I know this should be a short post. I want to talk about one more thing. Well, we'll do it in the next post. I got something interesting to throw at you. So we'll be back for another post or three probably. Anyway, I'm Ryan Michael Galloway. I'm with We Don't Need No Stinking Recordcompany.com, and I'm talking to Steve Anderson of Steve Anderson Music Services, and we'll be back.